So the course is going to take a look at the early phase of Hillman's work and writings, just to set the context for this. He finished training at the Jung Institute in Zurich in the early 1960s, and revisioning psychology, his magnum opus, came out in 1975. So here there's a 15-year period with some really interesting writings, beginning with what was his doctoral dissertation at the University of Zurich, which he was pursuing simultaneously, just a book called Emotion, encyclopedic look at that topic. We're not going to be reading that. Instead, we're going to sort of begin by looking at a segue between that and his first sort of popular, in a way, publication, Suicide and the Soul, which is to this day considered a breakthrough work because he's really looking at that difficult question from a soul-centered perspective. So in terms of easing into what becomes the ideas and perspectives of archetypal psychology, we see the primacy of the soul, the focus on the soul. And from there, the course is going to look at books. The next book that came is a book called In Search on Psychology and Religion. And this is Hillman, very much sort of in the classical Jungian world and the interest in particularly a more Christian perspective. And we're going to move on then through using the volume that I edited on the theme of Senex and Puer, which also contains some really pivotal papers, such as Peaks and Veils, where he talks about the soul spirit distinction. And the course will move on through to working with what I think arguably is his first major publication, The Myth of Analysis, which immediately precedes revisioning psychology. And this is where we start to see the Hillman that we're used to reading about, the more radical thinker who's starting to challenge some of the ideas of classical Jungian psychology. And there's some fascinating ideas in that book that a lot of people miss, such as his notion of an imaginal ego, and the idea of isn't this where our work with the unconscious and the imagination is taking us to a sort of thoroughly imaginally engaged ego. In classical Jungian psychology, they call it the symbolic life, looking at the world symbolically, and Hillman has his own take on that. And then the last part of that book is just a marvelous meditation on the idea that it's Dionysus, the Greek god Dionysus, that rules the world of analysis. And we can think of this in terms of the deep dive into emotional life, for example, but also what is it that we're trying to retrieve in depth psychology? And it very much has to do with that Dionysian energy of engagement and a more thoroughly uh, sort of a revivification of existence through contact with the depths of the soul. So there are some of the themes that we'll be looking at, focusing on this early phase of Jung's work, Hillman's work and writing.